Welcome to the JCON's third annual Real Estate Summit, the largest real estate conference for the Jewish community in the New York metropolitan area. We're established and early stage brokers, syndicators, and developers will have the opportunity to hear from and network with leaders in the real estate industry. This event is brought to you by the JCC in Marine Park and Crown Heights Young Entrepreneurs. A young entrepreneur once went to a successful real estate magnate for advice. He asked him, "How did you become so successful? You own dozens of properties, employ over 60 people, and are pulling in revenue in excess of $3 billion. How did you do it?" The experienced businessman looked at the young hopeful and says, "It's simple. I can summarize it in 2 words. Good judgment." The young entrepreneur thinks for a moment and says, "I understand that you need good judgment in order to make the right calls in certain situations, but how do you get good judgment?" The real estate mogul says, "It's simple, 1 word, experience." The entrepreneur says, "But how do you get experience?" The mogul responds, "Simple, bad judgment." Our speaker today of our Leveraging Assets class is a very successful and experienced businessman who also has an online real estate course. You could sign up at nyrecourse.com, or you can refer to the pamphlets we have here on the side for more information. I give you the Senior Vice President of Diversified Capital, Aron Gottlieb.
Okay, thank you for the beautiful introduction. It's an honor to be here between Heimish Eden that are trying to make an honest living, and hopefully the schus from the Rabbim will help me get through these next 45 minutes, because when you come here and you see these beautiful surroundings outside, you're thinking to yourself, seriously, we have to go inside and work? It's a beautiful place. Why don't we go and enjoy the golf course? But I'd like to thank the hosts and the sponsors for tonight's event here and for giving me the opportunity to be able to speak in front of you. So the topic that I was asked to speak about is leveraging. Now, as you know, leveraging is 99.9% of the time a word or a terminology which is used in financing, okay? If you're familiar with what it means in financing, then that's great. I don't have to explain it. If you're not familiar with what it means in financing, let me try to give you an example that you could relate to, which is a very simple one. If you've ever seen 2 children playing on a seesaw, so the one that's heavier is going to push down the one that's lighter. And then the other one is going to use his feet and push up, and the other one's going to go up and down. And basically what they're using is they're using leverage, they're using their weight, so to speak, to get what they want. The one that's heavier is going to be able to go up, causing the other one to go down, and vice versa, right? If you've never seen this on a seesaw, maybe we could demonstrate it outside here later, but basically that's the concept of leveraging. When it comes to business, leveraging basically means, in the finance aspect, that let's say I have a property, and on this property I have some equity. Equity means that I have some funding which is not yet mortgaged, okay? And I can now use that equity to fund my next deal. So I go to the bank or I go to the lender and I say, I'd like to leverage my property towards being able to buy another property or towards getting credit towards another property. So that's generally what it means in the finance term. Tonight's topic that I was asked to speak about is how to leverage yourself in real estate to be able to take yourself to the next level. Okay? So in order to first understand how you're going to go to the next level, I'd like to first understand which level are you at. Obviously, every person in this room is at a different level, but the basic concept of real estate has always been and always will be based on risk and reward. It's always going to be based on the more risk you take, the more money you will make. The less risk you take, the less money you will make. However, you will always find that the risky deals have a lot less people bidding on them, whereas the very safe deals are always going to have many, many, many more people bidding on them, and therefore that causes, by the next principle in business, which is supply and demand, to always raise the price. Thank you. Okay, so again, the safer deals, and let's just quickly, what's a safe deal? A safe deal would be if I can buy a house in Borough Park for $100,000 and rent it out for $2,000 a month, that's an extremely safe deal, right? Because my mortgage is going to get covered by the rent, and my vacancy is going to be zero because you don't even have to put up a sign to say that you have an apartment for rent. You just tell the guy next to you in shul, and before you get home, you'll have 10 people already knocking on your door. But the reality is that a house in Borough Park is not $100,000. It's closer to $1 million, or $2 million, or $3 million.
2.7.
Okay, depending on where you live. This gentleman is saying 2.7. And if you're getting $2,000 a month rent, or $4,000 a month rent, or even $5,000 a month rent, you're not going to cover yourself. So ultimately, to buy a house in Borough Park and rent it out is not the business that you want to be in. Now, if you inherited a few $100 million, and you simply want to keep this money safe for generations and generations and generations, and you can afford to buy houses in Borough Park and Williamsburg and Muncie and not cover yourself, but you know that the value, the principal, is never going to go down, so then that's a safe investment. So it really depends on your prototype. Are you looking to make a living? Are you looking to make money for Shabbos, so to speak, like a fisherman? In this business, we say that many brokers are like fishermen. What they kill is what they eat. Or are you the type of person that you want to just save the money, save the principal, save the Karen, and make sure that it doesn't go to waste? And quite frankly, that's why people buy buildings in Manhattan. That's why people buy buildings in metropolitan areas, because they know that value will never lose itself. And a good portion of Manhattan is owned by foreign investors from France, from Germany, from China, from Japan, from the south, from the north, from different places where they're afraid to invest in their own countries, and they know that New York City always has that stability that it'll always be worth. And they're obviously not looking to make a tremendous profit, they just want to make sure that their Karen doesn't get lost someplace, that their principal doesn't get lost someplace. So that being said, there are people that want to be like somewhere in between. So they'll buy someplace where they know they're not going to cover themselves, but they're going to speculate, which is a word that means that you don't know for sure what the income is going to be or what your profits are going to be. You're going to hope that that's what's going to be in a few years from now, and they're going to hope that the profits are going to come in because the price of the building is going to go up dramatically, or even 5, 6, 7%. And at the end of the day, that's how somehow they're going to make their living. Now, that being said, for most of us, most of you that are here, I'm assuming it's not because you have $100 million in the bank that you're looking to buy one building in Manhattan. It's because you want to make real estate into a profession, or you already are making real estate into a profession, and you want to take it to the next level. So again, the question is, what does leveraging have to do with what you're currently doing? So leveraging, besides the terminology that it has to do with finance, like I said before, has to do with what inner strengths do you have in yourself that you've done until now that you can take now to the next level, okay? Which means like this. I have people that I know that do job interviews. They help people try to find jobs. With all due respect to everybody in this room, I think if you were a broker and you wanted to make sure you're getting your commission, you would tell it to somebody that you know for sure is going to close, right? Because that's how you earn your commission, by closing deals. So when you're a broker, okay, brokers go through a tremendous hard time until they get a listing, until they have what to sell that they can get a commission, okay? They finally get that listing, they're going to want to sell it only to someone that's going to close. Why in the world would somebody call you if they don't think that you're going to close? So how to deal with brokers and all of that is not tonight's topic. However, once you already figured out how you buy your first fix and flip deal, how to buy your first property, and you've successfully dealt with the ins and outs, and you found an area where all the investors are not running, because if you're going to run to the area where all the investors are running, I can guarantee you that you're not going to find the deal so quickly. The only deal that they're going to tell you about is the one that's the Sroigim after Sukkot, so to speak. You know, it's the lulavin that nobody else wanted to buy, or they're going to sell you, you know, they're going to sell you stories that were gebakken before Pesach, okay, or freshly after. They're not going to sell you things that are over l'soicher. They're going to sell you the stuff that nobody else wants to buy, okay? Now, how did you get your first deal? So many people deal with brokers. Many people network with other people in an area, with other investors that they know, which is a very smart thing to do. You go to somebody that you know is buying a lot of deals. There's only so much money that anybody has and so many hours in the day that somebody has. And sometimes you go to such a guy and you say, look, I'm looking for a deal. You look awfully busy. Next time when you got a deal, I'll give you a couple of dollars and let me take over the deal. Such people are sometimes, when they do this profession, they're called wholesalers, okay? Wholesalers means that they buy deals, they put a contract on it, and either they flip it, and you have to make sure that that's a legal thing, that it's assignable, or they just wholesale it, they make a couple of dollars, a finder's fee, and they let you go on your way. Other people, in order to get listings, they do mailings. They buy lists of people that own houses that are distressed or in foreclosure in certain areas, and they mail them. Other people simply knock on doors. I know in many neighborhoods that people want to get properties, they just knock on doors. Now that's in residential, it works great. Now, if you're going to want to take your business to the next level, okay, and you're going to want to go out of the fix and flip business, which is what we're talking about here tonight, how to leverage your inner strengths to move to the next level. If you're going to go to a multi-family building, what I mean to say is if you're going to go to a 10-family building or a 100-family building and look for the owner by knocking on the door, I can assure you that 99% of the time he's not going to be there. He's somewhere either out of state, he's in an office in Manhattan, he's in an office somewhere in Brooklyn or in Crown Heights or in Lakewood or wherever good Jews are sitting that own the buildings, or he's somebody that yarshed the building and he lives somewhere and he has a management company. So the way to reach out to this person now is by getting lists of building owners, that there are either companies that sell them, or you're going to have to go to your local township and look up to see who's the owner. The problem is that most of the time it's going to be the name of a corporation and not the name of an individual. So now you're going to have to figure out, how do I reach these people? And there are people that do this professionally, help you. Any good broker, any good person that's in mortgages knows how to find out the name of the building owner and find out how to reach them. So that's the first thing that you want to leverage. You want to leverage your previous experience of how you found your fix and flip deals. The next thing that you want to leverage is, how did you get your financing? Generally speaking, any time when you're going to go into a real estate deal, you're going to have to, on a typical deal, which is what's called an income producing property, that means, like the example we gave before, you bought the property for $100,000 and you're getting rent of $1,000 a month. Most banks will lend you on that 75 or 80% of the money. Where did you get the other 20, 25%? So either your rich uncle lent you the money, your neighbor invested with you, somebody that always promised you that she's going to help you, helped you, but you got the money from someplace, okay? Now, one of the things which I'm very, very strong about is that when you deal with investors, you have to know what your investor's appetite is. Is your investor looking for risky deals and make a higher return? Or is your investor looking for a smaller return, but he's very safe, he's a very, very stable fellow? Or is he looking to mix and match? Sometimes he'll do this, sometimes he'll do that, depending on what he wants to do in life. That being said, if until now you were doing fix and flips of buying 2-family houses and buying and selling them, and now you're going to listen to my advice and move on and try to buy a 20-unit or a 200-unit property, so at first you're going to say, 200 units, oy vey, this is not for me. How am I going to do it? But I'm telling you that just as many people out there that were willing to lend you 25% of $100,000, there are just as many people out there willing to lend you 25% of $20 million. It's just he might be wearing either the same hat, or he might be sitting the next guy over in shul. He's just on the next bench, maybe a little closer, maybe a little bit further back, or maybe comes a little bit, at different seasons. But basically what I'm saying is there are people that don't want to deal with fix and flips. Why? Fix and flips are great. And again, I don't want to discourage anybody from doing it. It's a great business. However, it's drying up in certain markets. You may have to broaden your market, drive another 10, 15 miles out in the area where you're doing until you're going to find more affordable units that you can continue doing it. Multifamily has always been and will always be the safest investment in real estate. Why? Because we're all going to go home tonight someplace and sleep under a roof, okay? Believe me, it's going to get very cold out there sooner or later. There's nobody that sleeps on the park, okay? So multifamily is always going to be the safest investment out there. And that being said, nobody wants to commute to work too far, so people want to live in better neighborhoods. And again, the safer the neighborhood, the lower the cap rate. The lower the cap rate, the less return on investment you're going to make. And there are investors that want to make a safe return, and there are investors that say, you know what, I have a lot of Einiglich that I have to support. I want to make a higher return. I'll take a little bit more of a risk, but you know what, I have to do it. I have no choice. And you're going to have to find those investors. Once you have such investors, and you do your due diligence, and you present them with the deal, it's just as easy to do a 20-unit or a 100-unit or 200-unit deal as it is to do your first 2-unit deal. Now, I wouldn't suggest that you start your first deal at 200 units, but if you were able to start off with 2 units and you're able to move yourself up to 20, and then go gradually, then it's a beautiful thing. One of my first students, when I started doing public speaking, was a gentleman that he was learning in Kyle in Lakewood. He came over to me afterwards and he said, this is not for me. I can't do it. It's too complicated. Due diligence, cap rates, return on investment. I'm all tamished. I can't do this. And I said, listen, let's walk before you run. Okay, let's walk before you run. Let's go find a one-family house, someplace where you feel that you can do it, and you know the market, and you could do the comps, and you could get all of the information. To make a long story short, he started off with a one-family, he then bought a two-family, and another two-family, and then a 4, and then a 16. Today he's holding at buying properties that are 250, 300 units. He has investors lined up that are willing to give him money. Why? Because he has a great track record. He's straight, he's honest, he shows them every nickel that he spent, every nickel that he made. If he buys stuff on credit card and he got the points, he shares that with his investors. He's as straight as an arrow. And therefore, he has people chasing him that they want to invest money with him. Now, I know it's not geschmack to give away the points from the thing, because everybody would love to go to Lag Boim on points and sit in business class. But seriously, for $1,000 you can buy a ticket. For $1,000 you cannot buy a good reputation. Okay? A good reputation in this industry, in being honest and straight, is the most important asset. And one more time, what's the magic word of this session? It's leveraging. If you have a great reputation and you have a great name, you're leveraging your inner strengths again, and it's going to help you move on to find your next deal. Now, certain people started off with 2 families, certain people started off with 4 family, and then as they went on, they moved on to multifamily, and then eventually they saw that, you know what, I like this, I'm good at it, but I want to diversify a little bit. I want to go into retail. I want to buy shopping centers. I want to buy office buildings. I want to buy industrial. I want to buy warehouses. I want to become a broker. Or on the flip side, some people were brokers, and then they said, you know what, I want to become a buyer. I made a couple of bucks. I want to invest it myself. So the channels of where you can go in real estate are phenomenal. But once you have the experience and the backup, and more than everything, the backbone, because in the beginning, everybody's scared. It's a tall building. What happens if this? What happens if that? The what happened questions are 1,000 a day, and every morning when you wake up, you say, 1 second, why should I do this? What happens if he says no, and if the bank's going to say no, and if the building falls, and if a cat falls through the chimney? You could find 1,000 reasons why you shouldn't do it. But once you'll do it once or twice successfully, all of these what-ifs will just be, okay, you know what, so I have an unexpected expense, and I'm going to have to recoup it. And I'm going to have to show my investor that we had an expense. It's a normal thing. Every normal investor knows that there are expenses that come up, and it's what happens is what happened. And that's what happened, and I could show it to you, and now we move on. Another thing which I like to push very strongly is, and especially people starting off with fix and flips, it's very, very hard sometimes to get to the next level. And fix and flips are extremely time consuming. But, if you are the type of person that your core is that you want to make money for Shabbos, you want to buy a $100,000 house, fix it up and sell it for 200, let's just say for argument's sake, okay? And you know it's going to take you 6 months to do this, but if you're only going to do one house, you're taking a risk, you might not make enough reward, you may have to look for a partner. And I very strongly encourage people to find a partner that they can work with, to find someone that's going to motivate them, someone that they can get along with. And a partnership is sometimes a great way to spread yourself out by not spreading yourself out too thin, because it's not just that you're going to do one house and he's going to do one house. The two of you together might be able to do 5 houses, because you might be able to now afford to delegate to have somebody else collect the rent, to delegate to somebody else have to do the management, to have somebody else look for the vendors that are going to do the work. And you're busy out there doing what you're good at, okay? Dealing with the brokers, doing the things that are hard to do for somebody else that you're already experienced in, and now you're going to leverage yourself in that field. Some people, on the other hand, don't work well with partners. They have to do everything themselves. Such a person has to stick in an industry or in a job in real estate that he can continue growing on his own, but it's not always easy. This is an industry that you must learn how to delegate and trust other people. Now, I do want to just, on that note, if you are going to find a partner, if you are going to partner with people, there are different methods that people use. There's joint ventures, there's people that do equity deals, there's all types of different ways how to structure partnerships. I strongly, strongly suggest that you sit with a Rav or a lawyer or somebody experienced in this, and you find out what your exit strategy is. Because sometimes partnerships go on for hundreds of years, and sometimes after 3 months, people see this is not going to work. And when that happens, it's a shame that the building should fall into the ground. These are all things you should speak about before. Who has the right to buy? Who has the right to sell? Who's 51%? Who's 49%? Mi beroich is a big question, and you should deal with this beforehand, not later, chas v'sholom, when it doesn't work out. Okay. Now that you've built a great relationship with some of your investors, and you know your markets, your next people that you're going to have to deal with are your lenders. Your friendly local bank is the one that's lending you the 75% of the funds. They know you as the guy that comes in to borrow $50,000 or $100,000 for a fix and flip. If you're going to come in now and say, you know what, now I want to borrow $5 million because I'm buying, 70 units or 50 units, firstly, you might be dealing with the wrong division. Until now, you were dealing more with the retail division, and now you're going to have to work with the commercial division. So your people there might not be knowledgeable. What I suggest sometimes is that if you are dealing with a bank, okay, or with a mortgage broker, and the mortgage broker says, you know what, I have to pass you along now to my colleague, why don't you tell him, you know what, I want you to do more than that. I want you to introduce me and tell him how good I was. I paid my bills on time. I never missed a payment. I have good credit. I didn't fedray you a cup. You asked me for documents. I had it for you the next day. Because don't forget, mortgage brokers also only make a living if they close the deal. They're very similar to real estate brokers. So if you're going to fedray them a cup, it's very possible they're never going to return your calls. So once you have a good rapport with somebody, a good mortgage broker can help you close the deals, number one. A good mortgage broker could also tell you which areas are hot. Okay? If you're going to go to a mortgage broker and say, I want to buy in this and this area, and he's going to tell you, you know something, I don't know anybody else that's buying there. Now, this might be a great thing. You might be the first guy in that neighborhood. But sometimes when you're the only guy on the bus, you kind of wonder, where's it going, right? If there are other people that are buying there, unless you're doing this for like a long time and extremely experienced, I would never tell you to go on a bus ride by yourself to a new neighborhood. If you heard that people are buying and selling there, and you're looking at the listings, and you see how quickly they're moving, you're checking it online, you're speaking to brokers, and you see that it's moving, then that's great. But if you're going to be the first guy there, it's a big problem. So again, you're going to leverage your past experience and go out to the mortgage brokers, to the bankers, and ask them, do you think that this is a hot area? And if he's going to tell you, I'm doing a lot of applications here, then that's great. And your relationship with these people are great to continue taking you to the next level. Now, brokers are the last people on your list that you have to contact. I mean, actually they're the first, but in this process, brokers are great people because they help you find deals. Most brokers, okay, and I just want to differentiate this between a big city or a medium city and a hick town, so to speak. If you're starting off, I don't advise you to buy your first property in Brooklyn or Manhattan or in the 5 boroughs, someplace where you're not going to be able to afford to buy it and make a living. I suggest that you drive out of here 20 minutes, a half hour, 45 minutes to Trenton, to Camden, to parts of areas in New York or New Jersey or Pennsylvania where you can still find decent deals that in case chas v'sholom something doesn't go as planned, you still have enough of a margin. I'd rather you drive an extra 20 minutes than cry for a couple of hours. So if you go to these areas, most of the brokers there are usually one-man bands. Okay, he might be the town mayor, and he's also the real estate broker. And if there's a fire, he might have to excuse himself because he might also be the firefighter. Now, this guy knows everybody in town. He knows every building owner. He knows every mortgage broker. He knows everybody. You better stay on very, very good terms with him. If you built a rapport with him, then that's great because he could probably tell you the next time when there's a listing in town, and if he knows that you're a closer, like I said in the beginning, you're the one that he's going to call. So now that you have the experience with him, you can leverage your previous experience to take it to the next level with this broker. If you're going to be dealing in Brooklyn or in bigger parts of New Jersey, Pennsylvania, where you're going to be dealing with brokerage firms, C.B. Richard Ellis or Cushman and Wakefield or JLL or all of these firms that have dozens and dozens and dozens of brokers in the firm. You may have a great relationship with one guy, but now that you have gone out of the smaller 10 to 20 unit market, and now you want to go to 100 units, it might be a whole different division. It might be their capital division, which now it's different people. I very strongly suggest take the broker that you worked with, that you have a great rapport with, and tell him, can you please introduce me now to your capital markets team. Let's go out for lunch together. Let's grab a cup of coffee together. Tell him what my previous experience was. Tell him how I was a mensch. Tell him when I one day couldn't make it on time for the appointment, how I called you. I didn't waste your time. I was considerate to all of your needs. And now you leverage your previous experience that the next broker will take you a little bit more seriously. Okay, so now that you're leveraging your previous experiences with finding the properties, funding the properties, and dealing with the brokers to move to the next chapter in life, as they say. How would you progress? What would you say should be your next step to leverage your previous experience and take it further? Now, there are many, many markets that are getting congested. Speak to the people that were doing condo conversions in Brooklyn 7 years ago, 10 years ago. They'll tell you they don't do that anymore. They do something else now. They might be doing it in other areas, okay? But the condo conversion business, which was very, very hot for years, died out. It just doesn't make any financial sense anymore. The people that were doing fix and flips in Crown Heights and in Bed-Stuy and in those areas, they had to go now to other areas that it's way too expensive there. So they know the business, they know the area, but it just doesn't make any financial sense to do it anymore. So now they have to leverage their previous experience and take it to the next level. What do you think? What are some of the signs to know when is it time to pack up my bags and move on to the next city? So number one, if you see that the brokers that used to call you on a regular basis with deals are not calling you anymore, why is that? Because you're already too experienced. You're already too experienced and you know your market. You know to follow, for example, your 70% rule. You know that you don't pay more than this. You know that you don't sell for less than that. They might not want to deal with you anymore. You know why? Because there's some new kid in town, and this guy is new, and he doesn't mind to make a little bit less money on the deals. So now when they have a property that's more difficult to sell and more challenging, or the seller might be you, and your exit strategy is to sell at a higher number, they're only going to find a newbie, so to speak, what they call them, a newbie, somebody that's new at this industry, and this guy, because he just wants to get into the industry, is going to overpay. So now, if all of those deals are going to newbies that are overpaying, the sophisticated, experienced buyer or fix and flipper is no longer in business in this town. There's no way in the world that he can continue doing business in this town. The only deals that he can continue buying in this town are the deals that nobody else wants to buy, which are either all cash deals, which you have every so often, a desperate seller that just wants to sell by Friday morning, and he'll take all cash. And if you could do a title search so quickly and get all of your financing, whatever it is, so quickly, then you're going to be the lucky winner. But basically, it's only going to be a handful of difficult deals that are left to be able to buy. So at that point, you're either going to have to move to the next city, or if you love this city and you know it, and I strongly suggest before you get involved, learn a city, learn the market, learn the comps, learn what's going on there. Once you know this city inside out, like the back of your hand, then it may be worthwhile to invest. You know what? So I can't do any more fix and flips. Let me look at 10-unit buildings. Let me look at 20-unit buildings. Let me look at 50-unit buildings. Now, I want to tell you a little secret. The Trumps of the world, and pardon I'm just using that as the people that are real players, the people that are capable of buying every single deal that's out there, okay? They are not buying 50 units. They are generally speaking, they are not buying the 50-unit deals. They're not buying 75 units in Brooklyn. These more sophisticated, serious buyers are looking to buy deals that are above a certain dollar amount. For example, if you'll call a broker and say, I'm looking to buy a deal in this neighborhood, if he's a decent broker and he values his time, the first question he's going to ask you is, what is your range? What's your price range? Are you looking to buy up to $1 million? Are you looking to buy from $5 million and up? What's your price range? The deals that are $5 million and up are generally consumed, or better yet, gobbled up by the bigger investors, by the people that need to make their money on the syndication fees, on the brokerage fees, on the finder's fees. There are people that buy these types of deals, and because it has a couple of extra zeros, it gives them an opportunity to flip this deal to somebody else, make a couple of dollars, but they'll wholesale it. Those deals are typically not the ones that, as a beginner, you're going to be able to afford to buy. You're going to have to find your sweet spot somewhere between 10 and 20, 30, 40 units, depending on the neighborhood and what you can afford to buy, because those are the deals that the guy that's doing 2-unit fix and flips is too afraid to look at, and the guy that's more sophisticated and doing this for 5-10 years is not interested. So you have to be realistic and say, why in the world is somebody going to sell this property to me? There's so many people out there that are buying. Look around. Can I know how many people are in this room, in the next room, in this whole place, and how many thousands more didn't have time to come here because they're out somewhere buying a deal? There are thousands and thousands of people on a daily basis that are buying real estate and making a nice profit. Wherever you drove here tonight, this afternoon, wherever you came from, I can guarantee you that on the way, you passed by at least, you may have not noticed, but within a mile of every direction, considering your whole trip here, you probably passed 30, 40, 50,000 buildings. Okay? It's very possible that one or two of those buildings a year, if you can somehow get under a transaction, is more than enough to feed you and your family if you can facilitate a deal. You don't need to do 100 deals a year in most cases in order to make a living. There are buildings a dime a dozen, and many of them trade hands hundreds of, not hundreds, but many, many times in the course of the lifetime of the building. Many brokers that know areas well sell a certain building over and over and over again. We once bought a property from somebody that he bought it for $2 million, he sold it to the next guy for $4 million, the next guy sold it to the next guy for $6 million. When we rolled in, it was already at $9 million, and it's the same property, there's nothing wrong with it, just people want to take profits and move on. So when you're going to see a property that you think this is something that you can afford to make a couple of dollars on, you're going to have to leverage your previous experience, your previous knowledge, and figure out how can I make money here? Why is this guy selling it? Why am I smarter than the guy that's flipping it to me? Now, in reality, you may sometimes have to switch career paths. That means you may start off doing fix and flips. You may start off buying 10-family unit, and then you're going to find out that this area is already way, way too congested. I just can't do business here anymore. I can't find deals. Many, many people that I speak to now, that prices have gone up so high, say, I can't find a deal in Brooklyn. I can't find a deal in New Jersey. I have a good friend that wakes up every Monday morning and flies out of town to Atlanta, to Chicago, to Cleveland, to different areas where there are a lot less people, especially with yarmulkes, that are buying deals, and it's just much easier. There are less people bidding on the same deals. It says, I'd rather sit on a plane for 2 hours than chase a deal and then find out that somebody else outbid me. So there is just a certain nature of the beast, so to speak, on how many properties you can find in a certain area that you feel comfortable with. If you have to switch career paths, so to speak, that means if you started off at fix and flip and now you're going to go into multifamily. So I'd like to tell you a little secret. You better do an analysis of your personal situation to see if you can afford to do that. That means when you were doing fix and flips, you knew that every 6 months you were selling a property and taking home $30, $40, $50, $100,000 profit, and you had what to eat. If you're going to be doing multifamily on a larger scale, 50 units, 100 units, your reward at the end might be much bigger. But can you survive the 2 or 3 years of the uncertainty until you're either going to sell it or refinance it or reposition it to make a lot more money? If you don't have what to eat for those 2-3 years, it's not going to be funny. You're not going to make it through. So that's why I suggested before, it may be very worthwhile to take in a partner. If you can take in a partner that could do half of the work, what I would suggest is that if you could, although they say, as mekenish tanzen of zwei chasanas, you can't dance at 2 weddings, but I would suggest that if you could, push yourself a little bit, continue possibly doing your fix and flips a little bit, invest, leverage 2, 3, 4 hours a day into finding larger deals so you don't break up your bread and butter, don't lose your bread and butter of how you feed your family. But on the other hand, you could also grow your business and grow yourself and leverage yourself with all of your acquaintances, financing, all of the 3 things that you need to find the building, brokers, funding, and financing, so that you could take it to the next level. Now, if you can figure out how to do that, find enough hours in your day to continue making your bread and butter and start picking up larger deals, even if it's once a year or twice a year, slowly but surely, you will build yourself up a portfolio, a diversified portfolio, of properties that will be income producing, and you're going to leverage yourself that you're not out to dry. Now, you're not in the rain without an umbrella. If chas v'shalom something goes wrong with your large property, or if something goes wrong with your smaller properties, you're not in the rain without an umbrella, so to speak. You're diversified and you're well covered in the case of an emergency. Now, I had the opportunity to speak to a gentleman last Friday. Okay, this Masa is gebacken of Pesach. Okay? I spoke to a gentleman last Friday that he's in the business of doing direct mail. Direct mail means that there are people like yourselves that want to buy properties all over. So how do they get listings? How do they find out who's selling? So what they do is they mail letters to people and say, hi, I'm an investor. I'd like to buy your property. If you're interested in selling, please call me. Now, he has a business. Instead of people selling regular mail, how many of you get mail every day that you just put straight in the garbage because it looks like it's an offer or something, a solicitation? So what he does is he pays humans to handwrite the address outside. He buys lists and he handwrites it outside. And history has shown in marketing that the success rate of people opening up such envelopes is way higher than traditional print. It's just a fact. So he has a company somewhere out in Nebraska, and this is what he does for a living. So I was schmoozing with him, and he's telling me as follows. Most of the people that for the past 5-10 years have been buying lists of residential homeowners and mailing it to them, and they buy the list and they mail it again and again and again and again, and they get a certain bang for their buck, so to speak, or they get a certain return on investment. Most of them have stopped doing it to residential homeowners. Why? Because they just see the return on investment is not happening. But they're leveraging, so to speak, they're using the same technique, but now they're buying lists of multifamily owners. Now they're buying lists of shopping center owners. Now they're buying lists of raw land. They're branching out, they're diversifying into other areas using the same skill sets like they've used in the past to try to somehow grow their business. Now, although I always preach that it's very, very important to stay focused, okay? And if you're going to start off, and you're first starting off now, and you're going to start doing fix and flips, and then a month later you're going to start doing for retail and for office and industrial, and oh yeah, warehouse too, like you're going to try to do everything, I can guarantee you that al pi derech hateva, you're going to fall on your face, chas v'shalom. So branching out is only something that you can do once you are already, like the topic of this class is how to leverage and move on to the next step. But first you got to be on the first step very, very secure. You have to know what you're doing in your first primary business of doing either fix and flips or doing 10 units and 20 units, very, very solid. You have to be great at that. People that know this industry. I have a friend that buys apartment buildings in the Bronx and in Harlem. You give him an address and he can tell you exactly what it's worth. He can tell you exactly who the owner is. He does so much homework on the neighborhood that when a property comes up for sale, he can tomorrow morning put in an offer, and brokers love to deal with him because he knows the Bronx and Harlem like the back of his hand. You can't catch him on a property that he doesn't know who owns it. He even knows when the last time they put in a roof. He knows every single property. And whenever a great deal comes up, he's Johnny on the spot. He's ready to jump on it because he already did his due diligence. He's just waiting for the owner to decide to sell it. So now, if you see that you have to diverse and you have to go into a different market, make sure you hold on to your bread and butter. Unless you have income from someplace else, going into a new area that is unfamiliar waters is a very, very scary one because you're not going to have your bread and butter. So if you partner with someone so you can do half the work and he can do half the work, that's a great way to move on. There's also other things that you can delegate. You can delegate sometimes, especially with multifamily, you can delegate to other companies to do your due diligence. You can delegate to other people to do your management. If you're good at finding deals, right, like we said before, if you are the guy that you are a great schmoozer, you could schmooze up the brokers, you could take them out to Starbucks, find one where they'll let you in with a yarmulke, and you can go into a Starbucks and nobody's going to throw you out, and you can schmooze up brokers to death, then that's great, and that's what you should continue doing. Why in the world would you want to be the guy that's collecting the rent? You're wasting your time, you're wasting your energy, you're wasting your God-given strengths. Give that out to a management company, let them collect the rent, let them do the bookkeeping, and you do what you're good at. Now, if you see mid-air of the flight that there's turbulence, so you either got to go higher or you got to go lower. That means like this. If you see that your sweet spot of finding buildings that are 10 units or 20 units, you're just not finding a deal. It's been 3 months, 4 months, 6 months till you found, since the last deal that you've done, there's obviously something wrong with the plan that you have. And of course, you're not going into this without making a sound business plan beforehand. And I simply mean, what is your plan? How much hours a day are you going to put into finding a property? By when are you going to continue looking in this area until you find your first deal? If let's say, just say, for example, you say, I'm going to look in Camden, New Jersey, and I'm going to try to find 20 units to buy within the next 2 years. If after 2 years you only found 10 units, you have to now make a decision and say, look, my business plan just doesn't work. It was a great idea, but it just doesn't work. If you found 40 units instead of 20, so then that's great. Stay there, keep going. If you're at a point where you're not sure, if you have something definite that you can move on to, then take your previous experience and move to the next city. Or hire a partner, take in somebody else, hire somebody, doesn't have to be a partner, maybe hire somebody starting off, and let him continue running your business in Camden while you move on to the next city. Don't give up your bread and butter so fast, because it's not always so rosy. And real estate generally goes through a cycle, it goes through a wash, and sometimes things get very, very expensive, and then there are a couple of years that you just can't find any deals. Okay? I'm not a Navi, I'm not a prophet, I don't know when that cycle is going to hit the top. Nobody does. If anybody knew, I wouldn't be here. I'd be out taking kvitlich or doing something of that nature. But people are still buying. People are still thinking that things are going to go higher. When will it end? Nobody knows. If there's anybody here that knows, Adrabah, we'd all love to hear. But the reality is, when you see that people are still buying, it means that most investors feel that there's still plenty of meat on the bone. When you see all of the sudden brokers are calling you every day and they're saying, hey, I got a deal, hey, I got a deal, hey, I got a deal. Start thinking to yourself, you know something, I'm not such a great guy. Why is this broker calling me? Why is he calling me? I never heard from this guy before. How did he all of a sudden seek me out? It must be his regulars that he's calling with deals are telling him, sei gesund, shalom. I'm not interested in buying anymore. The market is too hot. The market is too high. I don't see any. So now he's calling you as a secondary guy, and he wants you to be the fish on his bait. Okay? Now, so be realistic with yourself and see, is this a market that I still want to invest in? Or maybe let me make a lowball offer if they're still willing to sell at the lowball price. Now, usually the concept is very, very simple. It's buy low and sell high, right? Something we'd all love to do. However, most of you know that you make your money in real estate sometimes on the buy. When you buy a good deal, sometimes that's where you make your money. And sometimes you have to make your business plan on how much money am I going to invest into this deal until I could turn a profit and flip it at the end, so to speak, sell it at the end after I fix and flip it. And your exit strategy is the most important that you should map out before. So if you're doing fix and flips, you better know very well the 70% rule. If you're in a super hot market that looks like it's getting hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter, be very, very careful not to overbuy. Because if you're going to overbuy, you're going to be over-leveraged. And if all of a sudden the market tanks and you're the one holding the hot potato, that's not a place where you want to be. So you have to take it very, very, you have to, on the one hand, want to continue buying, but on the other hand, you have to be able to have an exit strategy. However, you must remember a very, very important rule. Okay? And this, again, it depends on each person's personal financial situation. Nobody in real estate ever lost money unless they sold. So what I mean to say is as follows. If you're going to buy a property and all of a sudden the market tanks, if you can afford to hold on to that property, even if your rent is not covering your mortgage, but if you can pull out money from under your mattress, okay, and keep paying the mortgage for a month or a year or 5 years until the market picks up, and then eventually you'll resell for a profit, even after you put your money back under your mattress, you don't lose any money. But if you're not well planned, if you're not well thought out, and you don't have the funds to continue feeding this investment, then sooner or later, unfortunately, there's a word called foreclosure, and banks are not as friendly when they come take away the property as they are when they come originally and they introduce you to the loan officer. When things don't go well, they're not the happiest bunch. And unfortunately, too many people I know lost properties, lost buildings because they were undercapitalized. Undercapitalized is a nice way of saying was that they were broke. They didn't have enough capital to continue running with the investment. So if you don't have the proper business plan and analysis on how you're going to run this thing, you're going to get into trouble if the market all of a sudden has a recession. But again, remember, you only lose money if you sell. If you can afford to hold on, then you'll make it through. Now, if you're in a certain markets and you see that cap rates are getting very, very high, until now you were able to buy a 20-unit building at a 6 cap or a 7 cap in this neighborhood. And now all of a sudden brokers are calling you with 8 cap, 9 cap deals on the same properties. What does that indicate to you, fella? What does that indicate to you? That means that the rules of supply and demand are indicating that less people are buying these properties now. If less people are buying these properties now, what does that tell you? They don't want to do business anymore? They're all retiring? No, it means that they don't want to invest anymore into this area. So now take a good hard look at yourself in the mirror and say, why should I be the fool buying this property? Now, if you have a way how you can buy this property and take the risk, and like I said before, you have money under your mattress that if and when there's a problem, you can afford to carry it, and the other investors couldn't, so then that's great. So then that's a great deal for you. It might be a great opportunity. But if you can't, read the writing on the wall, guys. Read the writing on the wall. If you see that the cap rates are jumping up, there's a reason for it. And don't be fooled into thinking. So leverage, again, use your previous experience of knowing what supply and demand, how it indicates the price, to know how to go further. If all of a sudden brokers that you never heard of are calling you, it's not a great sign. It means that they don't have their regulars. If all of a sudden the for sale signs that you saw on houses or on properties are sitting there instead of a month, they're sitting there for 6 months or 9 months, it's a problem. If you're going to go on to LoopNet or some of the other sites and take a look and see that the listings are there not anymore for 30 days or 45 days, but now it's at 180 or 200 days, there's a reason why nobody's buying these properties. Now, it doesn't mean you shouldn't buy it, but it definitely means that the asking price should not be the selling price. There's nothing wrong with going cordially over to the seller or to the broker and say, hey, I realize the market is a little bit, I'm willing to put in an offer, but you'll pardon me, but I'm going to give it in for a lot less than you're actually asking. And you don't have to accept it. But if you do, here's my number, and call me if you do. But you have to make your money on the buy. Because if you're not going to make your money on the buy, then you're going to be way, way over-leveraged, way, way over-financed. So, if you're focused on buying, low, fixing, holding, refinancing, and selling, then just do one thing afterwards. Repeat. That means if you found a strategy that's working for you in a certain market, buy, fix, hold, or refinance, sell it to yourself, so to speak, and then repeat. So that's basically what tonight's topic is, how to leverage yourself and move further. I think we're supposed to end this at 6:30, but I do want to take, if anybody has any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them now. Yes, sir.
You said that in certain cases, people aren't able to capitalize properly. My question is, do you have a process? Obviously, it's dependent on what industry you're in or what area of real estate you buy in, but do you have a process of how you are able to predict and capitalize properly, either per asset or just a general concept?
So that's a great question. And it's really more geared towards a financing person, but in a nutshell, when you're buying a property, let's put it this way, let me back up. Most people that lose properties is because they're undercapitalized, as we said before. Why are they undercapitalized? They sat for weeks and months doing Excel spreadsheets, doing everything impossible to... The answer is because sometimes unforeseen things happen. Rents drop, tenants move out, things happen. There's a very important fund that you have to have if you're going to be in this business and you're going to be successful for a long time, and it's called a reserve fund. And something which I try to teach people when they do investing is they should definitely put away money every month or every quarter into a reserve fund in the event that such a thing happens. Now, banks will generally have a certain criteria that they'll want you to follow when you're investing. If they're going to lend you 75%, they expect for you to put in 25%. They expect for you to put in money into a lockbox for repairs. They expect for you to have certain... So usually your lender will predict it. If you're a safe guy, if you're a guy that what we call in the industry belts and suspenders, you'll make a reserve fund. Okay, so we have 2 minutes left if anybody else has any questions.
I've been investing very well in shopping centers.
So just announce, as soon as it's over, we're going to meet on the main ballroom. I want you to go down to the main ballroom.
Okay, as soon as this is over, in 2 minutes, we're going to do mincha in the main ballroom.
My son-in-law puts them together, and we get about 12-13%. And the thing is, I asked him, why don't we go into residential housing? He says, no, too many problems with residential housing. But he did say something to me recently, and it really disturbed me. He said that Amazon is going out of business. Don't worry about it. He said the shopping centers are doing great.
Okay, so this gentleman is raising a point which is as follows. In the retail sector, so to speak, people that own shopping centers, many of them are in deep distress right now. Why? Because many retailers are going bankrupt because of Amazon. Amazon is hurting many retails, many chain stores, and people that have owned shopping centers for years are all of a sudden going crazy because the tenants are moving out. So his son-in-law is saying, let's go into multifamily. On the other hand, some people are saying that Amazon will not last forever. And the concept of going back and feeling the shoes before you buy it and touching the chair or the furniture will come back, and you should stay in retail. Who is right, you or your son-in-law? You're probably both right. It depends on the area and on the market and how much you're paying for the property. But to make a long story short, multifamily will always be the safest. It will also be the most labor intensive because you're dealing with humans and you're dealing with broken pipes. And when you're dealing with retail, traditionally you're dealing with triple net leases, which is easier to manage. And that being said, it's easier to move along. I'd like to thank you all for coming. I'd like to thank everybody that sponsored. And there's mincha now in the next room.